today's Throwback, we are having a look at the NECA Friday the 13th Remake, Jason Voorhees. Spot decided to do a throwback on, really, the remake Jason Voorhees because of one or two reasons. First of all, I've always loved the figure. I thought they did a pretty good job on the figure. And second of all, now that if you are following the interweb, the news currently going out there, you obviously probably have known that Friday the 13th has been off and on rescheduling for getting the new movie back up and going. And one reason or another, first it was a found footage, then that luckily got dropped because I really would have hated found footage. Then they were planning on kind of doing like an 80s version of Friday the 13th, which I liked. They were considering having another reboot, which I thought was so stupid. Just, we've already done a remake, we don't need to do another one. So finally, it seems like we're going to get another Friday the 13th. We don't quite really know what the new Friday the 13th is going to be about, whether it's going to still continue on with this particular Jason. But I thought it was a perfect time to kind of go back and revisit the first time we got ourselves a remake Friday the 13th. Some people would not like Friday the 13th's remake either, or the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I know both were heavily criticized by fans, but I didn't mind actually the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. The Friday the 13th I found just wasn't really, this didn't really scream Jason to me. But needless to say, Spot's going to have a look at the remake Friday the 13th figures from the folks over at NECA. Now, if you remember, when we initially had a look at these figures, Spot had already opened it up. We had a look at the figure. I still have that figure, so I'm only really going to show you the package end of it. And then we're going to go back and have a look at the figure that we initially looked at in the very first review. NECA had done this before with a couple of instances where they released the figure as a 2-pack or released the figure as 2 individual releases. It's essentially the same figure, they've just simply swapped the heads. So the hockey mask wielding head, hockey mask wearing head I should say, and the sack head were just simply reversed depending on which figure you picked up. So ultimately, if you picked up one over the other, you still got the exact same figure, just depending on how you wanted to have it displayed. As for packaging wise, Jason does come included with a standalone machete. Comes with his 2 alternate heads like we've already discussed. Down below there's a picture of what the Jason Voorhees figure will look like out of packaging. As for the back of the packaging, a substantial read-up. Crystal Lake has a sinister history. It is said a young boy named Jason drowned when the counselors of Camp Crystal Lake weren't paying attention. When the camp was finally set to reopen after the tragedy, all but one of those charged with rebuilding the site were mysteriously murdered. It was discovered that the boy's unstable mother, Pamela Voorhees, has been avenging the death of her son, Jason. Fortunately, she was beheaded before she could inflict any more harm. But Jason survived and has been keeping watch over his eerie domain. Those who dare defile Crystal Lake and the memory of his mother meet their bloody end at the razor-sharp blade of his machete. Much like the howling winds that echo through the rotting cabins of Crystal Lake, Jason is a terrifying force of nature that cannot be stopped. And then finally, just on the other side of the package, you can go to www.necaonline.com. Check out some of the other stuff that NECA's releasing for Jason Voorhees. The upcoming Ultimate Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 3 has me super excited. But Spot's going to take a break. I'm not actually going to get either one of these opened up. I'm going to keep them sealed, so kind of have them up on my wall. But when we come back, we're going to get a better look, once again, at the original remake Jason Voorhees from NECA Toys. There's more heading your way, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Just like with the reboot, because Jason Voorhees basically starts with a sack mask on, we're going to start this review with the sack mask on this figure as well, and then we're going to transition it over to the hockey mask. Alright, so whatever feelings I might have about the reboot wasn't bad, but to be honest, I just found it was a really long-paced movie. I didn't like the characters at all in it. The only thing I did like about the reboot was this guy. Derek Mears, I think, was, if you could replace Jason, well, Kane Hodder, with any other actor to portray Jason Voorhees, I think Derek Mears was the perfect Jason. He was kind of a combination of some of the earlier Jasons, like Part 3 Jason, the speed, the movement of Jason, but then he had the big brooding size that, Kane Hodder brought to the table. So I loved Derek Mears as Jason Voorhees, and I really would hope that this next installment, first of all, isn't another reboot, because we don't really need another reboot. You can kind of retcon a little bit the reboot and then just kind of go in a different direction. Like, the reboot, I think, for what it needed to be was okay, but you could keep Jason as is, if he's emerged from the water, and the big surprise, no surprise whatsoever, of him coming back out of the water and grabbing the two. But then after that, you have lots of ways to go about Jason Voorhees, just keeping the same character. You don't have to reboot it all over again, because all we need is a reboot of yet another a movie that's already been rebooted. At any rate, Spot's not going to bog down this video talking about his opinions of the remake Friday the 13th. I just hope we don't get another reboot. At any rate, here is Jason Voorhees in his sack-wearing mask, which he wears for the first 15-20 minutes of the movie, in one of the longest intros prior to a title, I think, of any horror movie. He is wearing a rather interesting outfit. He's got a long jacket going on here, which is, I think, a welcome design. I actually quite liked the design of it, rather than just simply giving him like a button-up shirt like he's worn in the past, tucked-in shirt like he wore in Jason Goes to Hell. This is something that you could imagine a guy living in the wilderness would actually have worn. Something that would still keep him warm, right? Outside in the cold. He does have a shirt underneath, heavily stained, rips and tears. Imagining this would have been something that he would have found or taken from one of his victims. It's been yellowed, it's been dirtied. Jason doesn't care. Showers? Please. Jason doesn't care. He's wearing a long pair of gray slacks with also rips and tears in them. He has also the little holster on the side that holsters his machete. I'll show you that in a second. Some ripped bottom cuffs of the pants, just some hiking boots or just regular boots going on there. And of course, let's not overlook the sack mask. A very eerie, just creepy looking design of the character, even if we never got him in a hockey mask until the next installment. Just really, really well done. It wasn't the loose sack that the second Friday the 13th, or the first appearance of, I guess, adult Jason was wearing in Friday the 13th Part 2. This is more a wrapped around, heavily creased sack face. I quite liked it. I thought it was really good and added to the eeriness of this character, especially when he's running. That was probably the best aspect of the movie as well. And of course, as Jason will then go throughout the course of the movie, he then comes across some guy doing weird things with mannequins, and then he comes across the alternate head, in this case the hockey mask. So let's go ahead and pop the sack head off, just like that. And we'll put the one thing I don't like so much is that the long hair. I wish he didn't have as much of the long hair, but other than that, I really like the design of this Jason. Especially loved the fact that his neck was as broad as it was. It was about the size of a tree trunk. What I tend to do too is I tend to try to bring the head up as much as I can as well, within, of course, an accurate level. That way I can showcase more of the neck, because again, he's got this broad neck in the movie. The hairs are attached to rather the back strapping of the hockey mask, but it's quite a cool look for Jason Voorhees. The mask also is heavily dirtied. The little chevrons or the little decorations there on the hockey mask are scratched up. It's not a pristine looking mask. You imagine this would be a mask that's been sitting in somebody's attic for a very, very long time. If you are wondering, no, the hockey mask is, well, it is removable, but I don't know if anybody really should be seeing this. It's quite a gruesome, garish sight. Not something even that you see in the movie, but If you've probably already seen my review of this guy the first time around, you've probably already seen the mask coming off. And we'll just take the mask completely off. There is how you can see how the hair attaches itself to the strapping. And there is a face only a mother could love. There's Jason Voorhees. Long straps of hair there. I like how the one eye is further down the side of his face. Then he's got a regular normal looking eye and a very chewed up looking mouth. It just looks gangly. And we don't see much of it, although, you know, you could Google it and see what, you know, you can see better looks at what the character's, well, Jason's face looks like. It's pretty much like this. Not a pleasant sight to be seen. But I like, though, that his face is just like gnawed up. It's just all these little pocks and little markings on the sides of his face. The coloring doesn't quite gel with the rest of his neck. Like the neck is more of almost a yellowish color, whereas the face is more flesh tones. It doesn't quite match, but that's not something that you're going to probably be looking at too often. Let's go ahead and put his mask back on. Here we go. Very cool figure. I still love this figure. He's not as posable, though, as some of the Ultimate Jasons that we are now getting, especially when it comes to his legs. His legs are just staction. There's no posability, basically, like on this section here, except for his feet. There's some posability right there as well. Having a look at his other accessory, he comes with his machete. And his machete is almost, well, it's almost half the length of Jason. It's very long. It's one of his longest machetes he's wielded in a movie. If you want, you can also slide the machete down into the holster if you want to have it displayed like that. But really, any Jason collector would likely display the machete, yeah, you guessed it, in his hand. And we can just slide that into the hand area. It actually sits in his hand very easy. It's not something you have to struggle too much with. And luckily, he does have elbow articulation, so you can bend the elbow there. There we go. And you can get Jason wielding the machete. Probably in a better job than what I've just done here, but you get the idea. As aged and weathered as the hockey mask is, equally said for the machete as well, which has that dirty, almost rusted look to it. You would almost be fearful of surviving any sort of bludgeoning by this, because you would probably require a tetanus shot afterwards for how rusty this blade is. He doesn't come with any other accessory. Not that he would necessarily need another accessory, but yeah, the figure really turned out quite nicely. The detriment, I suppose, if anything, to this set is the fact that as cool as the hockey mask is, the sack mask actually is as equally cool. All the more reason you would probably want to pick up two. All the more reason why NECA released these figures as two different variations to packaging. If you can get one, absolutely perfect. You can swap them out to your heart's content. Or you can get two of them and display one with the sack mask, one with the hockey mask. In the way of Jason's posability, we'll just take the machete out of his hand for a second. The head is on a ball joint, as you've already seen. Lots of movement going on there. Shoulders are hinged. They hinge out, rotate all the way around. And if you are wondering, like, the jacket is a very soft, pliable rubber, so it does do a pretty good job of moving out of the way if you so need it to be. As we've already looked at, he's got the hinge in the elbows, a rotation in the forearm, and that same hinge. He's got a rotation in a peg that's attaching his wrist, or his hand to his wrist. He has a slight, very slight swivel in the waist. Not all that much, unfortunately. And then finally, he's got pegged-in shoes that give you just a little bit of posability, but really not all that much. Oh please, I really hope that we can get ourselves a remake. Well, not another remake. Let me just backpedal on that. A remake, but I'd like to see a sequel to this remake. If it wasn't quite what you wanted to do in the first time around and you want to just kind of correct the wrongs that was prevalent there in the original remake, just keep this. Keep this character, keep that lore still existing from the original reboot. Don't reboot that. Just continue on where you've left off. If you want to tweak Jason's design just a little bit, that's okay, but don't tweak the timeline. Fans of anything, it's anything more frustrating than a reboot. It's when a studio realizes that they should have done something different and then they reboot a reboot, and that's too much. On the other hand, Spot, I guess, did technically reboot this review. At today's Throwback, we're having a look at the Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th reboot that came from NECA Toys. Still like this figure quite a lot, and he sits on my collection shelf along with all the other Jason Voorhees. Not from that timeline, but still a very cherished figure that I still love having in my collection. Today's Throwback, Spot was having a look at we're looking at Friday the 13th's remake, Jason Voorhees from NECA Toys. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more Throwbacks heading your way. Thanks for watching, as you always do. See you next time.